Hello, everyone, and welcome to another discussion on understanding the self. And for this time, we'll be talking about stress. No, so basically, stress in everyday terms is the feeling that people have when they are overloaded, okay, and in struggling to cope with the demands of the society by, for example, academics and the like. So, stress is a common topic talked about during discussions with our friends, our family members. So, like for example, entering a new chapter in your life and having a new role in the family, right? So, also for the community or the society initiates more situations that are deemed to be stressful. For example, as of the moment, you are stressed because of the requirements in your subjects, right? Now, stress in people can be physical, emotional, or psychological. And when we say physical stress, this would include our um, sickness, okay? O kunwari, an individual is paralyzed, and that is an example of a physical stress. And when we say emotional stress naman, if you are currently undergoing the grief, no? Pag namatayan, it's natural that you would be stressed, right? And in psychological, if, for example, fear, okay? At the moment, you are experiencing fear because of the threat. Maybe someone is threatening you, and that makes you very stressed, right? Now, when we say allostasis, it's the process of how the body responds to stress, whether it is acute or chronic. And when we say acute, it's just a short term. Right? Panandalian lang. Then when we say chronic naman, medyo matagal na yung stress na nararamdaman mo. Right? Now, basically, stress is a universal human experience, no? That mayaman man, okay? Either your friends rich, they would experience stress, okay? If you are poor, you would still experience stress. So it's a universal human experience, and we all experience it, right? Now, stress is, of course, the response to events that are threatening to one's well being. Okay? So, if your well being or your present homeostasis or your balance in life is being threatened, then that would cause you stress. Right? Now, it is a common experience that can be occasional or again, it can be prolonged. As mentioned earlier about the allostasis, that it could be chronic or acute, right? Now, stress is also the result of an interaction between a person and the environment, right? So, in which the person believes the situation to be overwhelming and dangerous to his or her well being. Okay? Basically, our environment is the ones that gives us stress, basically, you know. It could be our family members, could be our academics, could be our boyfriends or girlfriends, okay? Or from what is happening in our society, right? Now, stressor, on the other hand, is the unpleasant situation that produces the stress. O, ano ba yung mga bagay na nagbibigay ng stress sa atin? Okay? So we have a lot. For example, who is your stressor? Or what is your stressor? Or where? Okay? Who, of course, that pertains to people. What is, basically, if we are students, what are the causes of our stress is basically somehow our academics, no? Um, requirements, final requirements, midterm exams, final exams, etc. Where for those people who are having agoraphobia, okay, or social anxiety, they would somehow be stressed when they are with um, in a crowd of people or in an open environment and the like. Okay. Now let's talk about the physiology of stress. Okay. So according to Hans Selye, Canadian physician, sorry. Okay. It's not the stress that kills us. It is our reaction to it. Okay? So Hansel is the first scientist to try to figure out how external stressors get under the skin, okay, to make us weak, right? Now, so we have the so-called GAS or general adaptation stages, okay? So when someone is um, presented with a new situation that could give him the alarm stage. So the stressor upsets homeostasis or our cellular balance. So basically, what do we do? Okay, our body is alarmed. Okay, for example, hala, exam is coming up. Okay, and that causes us anxious. Okay, and then the next level is the resistance stage wherein our body fights back by adjusting to the stress. Okay, we adjust to it. What do we do? When exams is coming up, what do we do? Okay, for some people they'll review. Okay, but for some they'll just matulog, sleep and let that exam come and let it be. All right, and the last stage would be the exhaustion stage, wherein rest permits enhanced adaptation. Wherein if we do not think really about the final exam coming up, okay, and we review it very well, then we rest. Okay, our anxiety would lower down, and of course, our stress would be nothing. No, but then without resting at all, like overtraining, injury, lack of and that would bring us lack of adaptation. All right. So this would somehow prolong the stress that we are experiencing. Right. Now, Celia did not believe that people should aim for a stress-free life. Totoo naman, right? No? Because some negative stress is simply unavoidable. It's called life, right? We somehow experience stress, and that's part of life, right? And our goal is to minimize the wear and tear on the system, not get rid of it entirely, right? And when we say stress, it somehow connotes negative things, no? When we say I'm stressed, ibig sabihin may pinagdadaanan tayo. But then there's the positive kind of stress, which we call it the eustress. Okay, for example, winning the lottery, getting a new job, that would give you a joy. Okay, that is what we call eustress. Right? Now, let's talk about the sources of stress. Medyo mahaba-haba ito, no? Madami. Right? So, we have frustration, conflict, change, adjustment, and pressure. So, we have five sources of stress enumerated. So, let's start with frustration. Right? Frustration is a Latin word frustra, which means in vain. All right. So we have different types. No? Under this area, we have personal barriers, environmental, and sociocultural. So tatlo. Right. So basically, frustration is a negative emotion that stems from the blocking of a goal-directed behavior. Okay, so failures and losses are often highly stressful to people. Okay, syempre, kung nag-fail tayo, imbis na makapasa sana, is if ever we fail, that would bring us a great stress in life. right? But then let's take a look at these things. Personal factors. We have here the personal limitations and weaknesses. Okay, this may deter the individual to achieve his goals, or these personal limitations and weaknesses may block the individual in achieving his goals. Okay, for example, poor health, okay, or personality traits. Okay, these are just some of the personal factors that may hinder the attainment of one's goals. Okay? Siyempre, kung sakitin ka, okay, that's the weakness. Or your weakness is you are not good in speaking in public. And of course, that's your personal factor that would, of course, bring stress to your life. That's the barrier. Okay? And on the other hand, environmental factors would include calamities, power failures, right? So these things we do not have the capacity to stop things like this, no, the natural phenomenons. So this would somehow block us in doing our objectives in life, right? And lastly, we have the socio-cultural factors. And when we say social cultural factors, these refer to the social and cultural factors that would hinder goal attainment, right? So this includes social norms and traditions, okay? Economic conditions as well, superstitions, especially here in the Philippines, we are fond of superstitions, and laws are some of the factors that may hinder an individual to achieve his goals. All right. Now, the second source of stress is conflict, from the Latin word conflictus, which means to strike together. Okay, so basically, stress arises when a person cannot really or readily make choice or a decision when confronted with two or more mutually exclusive situation, right? Now let's talk about the different or types of conflict. We have approach, avoidance, approach, avoidance, and multiple approach avoidance, right? So let's see. For the first one, approach. Okay, it says there that the approach conflict is not all bad, right? You have to decide between two attractive choices, right? So there's the conflicting attraction. So this occurs basically when the person is attracted to two positive goals that are mutually exclusive. Okay, that is, they cannot be satisfied or fulfilled at the same time, right? So this type of conflict can be resolved by delaying the satisfaction of one goal or pagpaliban mo na yung isa kung posible, right? Or by choosing one of the goals and giving up the other one. Yan. So, for example, anong pipilian ko? Hamburger or pizza? Okay, so you choose for the best one. Okay, so it's the um, um, easiest one. The person is attracted to two goals. Now, avoidance is conflict. The conflict presents two undesirable goals, right? So a person is confronted with this type of conflict if he is confronted with two situations that are both undesirable, okay, to him or her. So in this case, the person may vacillate or attempt to leave the conflict situation, okay, to avoid, right? So for example, ito, masakit ang ngipin. You have a toothache, okay, and that is of course painful. But then you are afraid of going to the dentist, okay? So what do? You somehow sometimes people confronted with this kind of situation, they just live or at least choose one of the uh, choices, but then basically they sometimes people live, okay, or just avoid things, right? Now, approach avoidance, on the other hand, is okay. This occurs when the person is attracted to one goal, okay, but this goal has both positive and negative characteristics, right? So in this case, the person may be attracted to the goals, but repelled at the same time. So this makes the this type of conflict often the most difficult to resolve, right? For example, the Hershey's chocolates, gustong gusto mo. You like eating it, but then um, ang negative impact of it would be you as the individual eating it would get a lot of calories, and that would somehow give a negative um effect to your health, right? And for the last one, double approach avoidance, okay? Um, the conflict is this kind of conflict is the most common. So the person has two goals, each has both good and bad characteristics. Okay, for example, since we are in the technological world now, for example, a cell phone, right? Sabi nila, there's a brand new phone, bagong labas. Ang kaso, it's too expensive, right? So if you're the individual who cannot afford it, um, masakit sa pakiramdam mo, right? But then there's an option, okay? You could somehow buy a second hand or a third hand, but the negative aspect of it, or the positive aspect of it, is it's cheap, right? So for those people who are rich, the first one is just, basic lang sa kanila yan. Pero this is just, an illustration of this kind of conflict. All right? Now, that's for the conflict. Now, let's have change, right? And as we all know, change is in an constant, right? So change could be positive, or it could be undesired or desired, right? So the reason for change is, of course, to alter the usual order of activities, right? Now, uh, let's have adjustment. All right, adjustment is, all right. Basically, it says here, individual copes with his ever-changing needs, motives, and habits. All right, we adjust to the different changes. Okay, for those people, yung mga matatanda ng generation, all right, they are not really good in technology, but then some were able to adjust to it. Okay, they are using different gadgets now and the like. Right? And lastly, pressure. Right? So if someone is expected to perform or conform to certain standards that he or she has difficulty meeting or coping with, then the person is said to be under pressure. Right? So pressure involves basically expectations or demands that one behaves in a certain way. So you are under pressure when you are expected to perform and execute tasks and responsibilities quickly, efficiently, and successfully. Right? Pressure is everywhere. Okay, from our parents, from our instructors, from our partners in life, and the like. Right? Now, let's talk about the responses to stress. Right? So, basically, people react to stress differently. Right? So, some may react to it negatively, okay, while others may devise mechanisms in order for them to adjust to the impact of the frustrating experiences. Right? Now, we have anxiety, aggression, apathy, dejection, and grief. Right? And anxiety is somehow common to those, of course, for those people who are stressed. Okay? And some people may develop a general feeling of apprehension or, let's say, uneasiness when they are under stress. Okay, so this feeling of anxiety may cause intense suffering. Okay, they would experience panic attacks, or at times they would somehow be irrational, or they have this irrational fear um, um, when they are stressed. Okay, now aggression on the other hand, okay, frustrated people may become hostile and behave violently when frustrated, which is true, no? When people are frustrated, they somehow resort to aggression. They're very angry, even to simple, simpleng bagay lang tinatanong mo sa kanila. And then, um, mamaya-maya magagalit sila. Right? So stress produces feelings of anger ranging in intensity from mild annoyance to uncontrollable rage. Rage. Pala. Sorry. Okay? So yeah. For example, here, for somewhere in the network, okay, why won't this light switch work? Okay? And the person doing or working on the control would say, servers are down. Now wait, they're back. But then, maya-maya, brownout na naman. Alright? So, sino bang hindi magagalit sa ganong sitwasyon? Alright? And third is apathy. Alright? When the stress becomes unbearable, okay, some people may become indifferent and, of course, apathetic. So, these people believe that the situation is hopeless and they just accept it since they think that they cannot control or they cannot do anything about it. Okay, so they'll just stay there, sigh, and say whatever, right? And lastly, dejection and grief. All right. So sometimes stress, especially frustration, simply brings an individual down. Okay? For example, losing in a contest and having poor grades. Okay? These situations would often produce feelings of dejection. Right? More profound setbacks such as death and financial reversals can lead one to grief. Of course naman, no? Namatayan ka, syempre, you would experience grief. Right? Now, let's talk about the factors moderating the impact of stress. Okay? So we have social support, personality, and psychological control. And under it, we have different concepts. Right? So in the social support, we have how many? One, two, three, four. Four concepts. Okay? So in the first one is the emotional support, right? So emotional support can be an effective, of course, in when it comes to affection. Okay, emotional support involves expressions of affection, okay, interest, and of course, concern that tell people they are being appreciated. Right? So it includes behaviors such as listening to the individual and presumably bolsters, of course, self-esteem. That if someone listens to you, right, may nakikinig sa'yo, then of course, your feelings of stress would somehow be lessened. Okay? Now, Appraisal support, on the other hand, involves helping people to evaluate and make sense of their troubles and problems. So this includes effort to clarify the nature of the problem and provide feedback about its significance, right? And we have informational support, and this involves providing advice about how to handle problems. So I know some of you, okay, are doing this informational support to someone, okay, giving advice of um, what to do when they are stressed. So this kind of support includes discussing possible solutions and relative merits of alternative coping strategies. All right, and lastly is the instrumental support, is providing material aid and services. Okay, instrumental support includes providing shelter, okay, lending money if you have, going along to a social service agency, or helping to assume work or family responsibilities. Right? Okay. Yan. Hindi ko pala napindot. Right? Now, we have personality. Alright? And it includes behavioral pattern, hardiness, and optimism. Right? So, in behavioral pattern, okay, it says here that in researches, okay, it showed that type A personality pattern are more prone to stress than the type B people, right? And when you say the type A people, they are the ones who are ambitious, aggressive, okay, someone who is competitive, impatient as well. And type B people are considered calm, okay, experience life in a more laid back, less intense way. So um, the behavioral pattern. So look at yourself kung saan ba kayo kabilang dito, type A ba or type B. All right. Now, hardiness is characterized by, okay, a sense of commitment rather than alienation. That when you do something else, or if you try to start a task, you do it properly, right? You are committed to do it. And control rather than powerlessness, that you have control over life, that this is your life and you have control over it. What else? Perception of problems as challenges rather than threats, right? That these things would be solved later in life, right? So all these things are just challenges. And then what else? Optimism um, is, of course, by the word itself, okay, it's the general tendency to expect good outcomes. Okay, that you're optimistic about things, no? When you started to work on a project, you are optimistic in doing it, and you are optimistic that the outcomes, okay, would be great or good, right? So optimists are likely to engage in action-oriented, problem-focused coping, more willing to seek social support. All right. What else? Pessimists are likely to deal with stress by giving up or engaging in denial. Okay? Diyan na yan eh. Right? So our goal here is to be more optimistic about things. No? Na kung may nasimulan tayong ginagawa, expect it to have a good outcome. Optimistic. All right? And last is the psychological control, right? And psychological control, it says here that people who have a sense of control who have a more control of their lives are less prone to illness and stress than those who are under the control of other people or institutions. Okay, that according to Carl Rogers, no, we have the power to shape our own lives. Okay, we have we should have a control of our lives. Okay, and not letting other people control us. All right, because being controlled by someone would cause stress. Right, that we are being pressured in doing something. So we should have this psychological control, right? Have a sense, having the sense of control, right? Now, let's talk about the coping strategies. Ito, mahaba na palang usapan natin. Pero sige. Coping strategies, active cognitive, active behavioral, and avoidance. Okay? So, active cognitive, right? People using these strategies actively think about the situation in an effort to make things better, right? Um, for example, okay, a girl who has just broken up with her boyfriend, kunwari, no? And she may have coped with it by convincing herself that she will be better off in the long run because she can use her experience as a lesson on how to establish a happier and a more lasting relationship kung magkakaroon niya siya ng relationship with another man in the future. Right? Now, active behavioral is when faced with a problem, some people take some action to improve the situation. Right? So the person does something to solve the problem. Okay? For example, a student who is problematic about um, failing in his, for example, sabihin natin, sa mathematics in the modern world. Okay? Anong gagawin niya? He may cope with this by with his difficulties by hiring a tutor or looking for a friend na magaling sa math. Alright? And avoidance is a strategy, no? So these are strategies employed by people who keep the stress-provoking situation out of their awareness. Okay? So, parang tinatanggal lang. We are just avoiding it. Alright? To avoid that provoking situations, we live. Parang ganon. So, we cannot experience it. Okay? Now, I think that's it. Alright? So, we will end there. And I'll be sending a video about the different defense mechanisms. Okay? Medyo mahaba na yung discussion natin when it comes to stress. Right? So I hope you were able to learn something on this discussion. Right? And if you have questions, just message me and or just type in the comment box and I'll try to answer it. Right? So thank you for listening and have a good day.